Welcome to this Killick Explains video, and I suppose not surprisingly, given the timing of releasing this, let's look at 3 financial priorities for 2024. I finished the year, you might remember, with investing lessons from 2023, so this is looking forward and saying what 3 things, not 20, no one can cope with that, but what 3 things could we be doing right now? Okay, so I reckon those 3, and then we'll go through them, are revisiting financial goals, getting a mindset together that expects the best, but is always ready for the worst, and then more pragmatically, don't lose sight of some fairly important dates. Right, let's go one in turn there. Revisiting goals. All right, now sometimes people say to me, what is planning? What is financial planning actually all about? It's about mapping the future. It's about basically putting a structure on the way you're going to achieve your goals long term, with the finances to back them, because your life costs money, buying properties, putting kids through private school, life after work without an income, care costs, you're helping kids with marriage, whatever it happens to be, it all costs money. So planning is all about having a structure, but also flexibility. So let's look at those 2 components, structure plus flexibility. Structure is essentially asking some open questions and trying to open them. I'm trying to close them. What do I want to achieve? By when? Now these can be harder to answer than it sounds. With whom? Am I a lone wolf? Have I got a partner to think about? Have I got kids to think about? Am I looking after members of the older generation, for example? And how much is it all going to cost? Now, frankly, thinking about this in a vacuum is pretty difficult. A spreadsheet, a cash flow forecast can definitely help, but those are the core questions. The science only follows once you know what do I want to achieve, by when, with whom, how much will it all cost. Flexibility is about recognizing that having built the plan, life changes, right? You have to manage your own personal circumstances and you have to manage your finances around them, okay? There's a famous misquote, if you like, of Darwin. People say he talked about the survival of the fittest. No, he talked about the survival of the best adapted, and they are not necessarily the strongest in the room, all right? There might be, but there might not be. In other words, strength of personality, of intelligence, of body, of physique, coupled with poor judgment, can be a disaster. All right? So what is being the best adapted all about in financial terms? Well, it's about recognizing stuff happens, unfortunately. People do separate, get divorced. Some negative stuff, like kids go off the rails. Older members of the family need help organizing care and care costs. Lots of positives, people getting married, clearly bonuses, one-offs, selling a business. So in other words, as your personal circumstances change, so that map's got to change as well. So you keep your long-term goals in mind, but the route to them might vary. So do look at, as you travel along, what performance are you getting from your portfolio? What did you expect to get? Okay, and be prepared to recognize your expectations might need adjusting. What's your risk attitude? Is it the right one? Your risk attitude when you're 2 years old, which probably means someone else is investing for you, is very different to when you're 82 years old, for obvious reasons, all right? So you need to look systematically, what amount of risk am I taking, and is the amount I'm taking appropriate? Because I'm afraid in life there's no free lunch. If you take a bit more risk, you'll tend to, on average, generate a bit more return. And think about new opportunities. Don't be blind to the fact that markets move all the time. It's how I can make these weekly videos. New opportunities come up and you need to have judgment to decide whether they're worth adding into the mix or actually should be ignored. Now, that's number 1. Number 2, expect the best, prepare for the worst. This is a mindset thing, and it's really important. It's about getting the right mindset. It's about knowing how to mitigate risk, if you like. And the mindset you want to develop, and I've talked about this before, is the realistic optimist. All right, now, what I mean by that is you shouldn't be gung-ho, crazy optimistic, because that is how you'll end up in piles of heaven knows what, single stocks, cryptocurrencies. Yeah, great when they're going up, a nightmare when they crash, all right? So it's not about being out and out crazy optimistic, but you've got to have the motivation and the energy to do investing correctly. So only hold enough cash, all right? Have the right outlook. In other words, balance the buckets. We've talked about these before, the rainy day fund, the foreseeable cause and capital, the lifetime savings, all right? And make sure that as you map a plan for the future, you have got the correct risk attitude built in for what it is you want to achieve. So good questions, by the way, on that. Have I got the right approach to risk? Good question to ask are things like, pretty brutal ones, and an advisor might help you here if you can't ask them yourself. What will I do if stocks drop 20%? And these are questions where people think, well, it won't happen to me, and then it does, and they have no idea what to do, like a rabbit caught in headlights. If stocks drop 20%, some people will panic sell. So they need educating, and they need potentially their risk, overall risk, if you like, adjusted to try and reduce that possibility. It can't be necessarily mitigated altogether, but it's worth thinking about. What if I lose my job? It won't happen to me, Tim. Well, it might. Happens to other people. And that's one of the psychological biases I'll talk about. People think it won't happen to me. You might miss your targets. Right, so you thought, great, 10 years in, I took an approach to risk. I thought I'd have X amount in the pot. Oh, I haven't. I'm a bit light. Now what? All right, am I going to panic? Am I going to just adjust the way I look at risk and return going forward? Wait a minute, I thought I was going to stop work, but it seems as though I've got too many obligations and liabilities. I can't afford to. That's a big one. Okay, well maybe there's a strategy that involves dialing down work without stopping, continuing to work, continuing to build up a fund for life after work. And always think about what's called your natural attitude to risk. Have you taken the correct amount of risk? That means you won't panic when things go wrong, but you do stand a reasonable chance of building long-term wealth to the point where you need it to be. Finally, some admin, all right? So some less waffly stuff, although the waffly stuff's important. Don't miss key deadlines. And there are a couple potentially right ahead of us as you watch this video. One is the 5th of April. That's the end of the tax year. And a lot of, without getting into detail now, there'll be other videos on this, but a lot of allowances and so on are use it or lose it, and some of them are coming down thanks to recent budgets. So there are reasons to get organised, get ahead, get on top of ISAs, get on top of junior ISAs, think about pensions, okay? But another one is 31st of January, and that's right in front of us now. That's the self-assessment deadline, otherwise you can get hit with fines. So if you haven't done already, get organised, get all your paperwork together, get the 31st of January filing deadline under control in tax return terms. Okay, lots of information there, and I've covered quite a lot of stuff quite quickly. So where to go for more? Killick.com/learn has plenty of videos on related topics. You've got a series of 6 guides. Okay, they'll be updated in the new tax year, but that's not quite yet. And those are editor@killick.com for any of those 6, hard copy or in PDF copy. And then there's Confidant, the quarterly magazine, and that is editor@killick.com.